You have got an image, you generated it on Midjourney, or maybe you clicked on your iPhone. You want to print it big, like wall big. In this video, I'll show you how to resize your image for large prints so it does not pixelate or comes out blurry. So I have this photograph, I clicked on my iPhone and I want to print it large. Let us find out how big we can print this. Okay, so I can right click and click on get info. And what value do we have? So it shows that the image has 4 MB of file, and then dimension it says 4284 into 5712. Now this is a unit we call pixels. Let us first understand what pixels is. That will help us determine what is the largest size we can print it. So I'll open this in the preview and I'll try to zoom in and show you what pixels is. So if I zoom in, now you can see, we have zoomed in at the max and you can see the squares are cropping up. Now this square is what we call pixel. Okay, 1 pixel is a 1 square. Now the amount that we just showed you, if I zoom back out, so this image has 4284 pixels on the width and 5712 pixels on the longer side. Now this is the only data it has. Okay, let me open this image in Photoshop and I'll show you a very interesting data. You can open this image in any other editor if you like. Now if I go to image and then image size, it clearly shows that it has 4284 and 5712 pixels, but it shows resolution as 72. Now let me tell you straight, this 72 resolution is a misleading figure. This data has no value. Let me explain you why. Every digital photo that you have clicked or generated using Midjourney, it is made up of pixels. 1 pixel is 1 square, right? Now here comes the interesting part, which is 300 DPI and 72 DPI. So Photoshop showed us the image was 72 DPI. So what does DPI stand for? DPI is dots per inch. So when we say 300 DPI, that is a square inch and it has 300 dots within that inch. So the dots are very close and cramped together in a small space. And if you talk about 72 DPI, the dots are kind of coarsely spread across 1 inch. It has only 72 DPI. The DPI is only valid when you print your art. For the digital space, what we have is only pixel and that is fixed. Our image had pixels, 4284 pixels on the width and 5712 pixels on the longer side. No DPI. DPI is required when we print the file. Now what happens when we print it in 300 DPI? So this pixels, we want to cramp it in 1 square inch. We want to cramp 300 pixels. Okay, 300 dots per inch. So 300 pixels, we want to cramp it within 1 inch. So what happens is this image, if we cramp it 1 inch, 300 dots, that is 300 pixels in 1 inch, the image will be printed into 19 inches long and 14 inches wide. So 14 inches is like 1 feet and 19 inches is like 1.5 feet. Now, if we do not print it in 300 DPI, but if we print it in 72 DPI, what happens? Now, again, we cramp the pixels as a spread of 72 dots in 1 square inch. This pixel correspond to 79.3 inches and then the width as 59.5 inches. So that is 5 feet long and 8 feet tall. You have heard this right. For high quality, you need to print your art in 300 DPI. Tutorials say it. Everybody says that. But do you know where does this 300 DPI came from? I'll tell you a big myth that you have been lied to. Now, before I break the myth about 300 DPI, let me show you where I came across that calculation of how long the image will be printed in 300 DPI or 72 DPI. So if I go on Photoshop, click on image and then image size. Now this is the original size from the unit. We change it to inches and right now it's 72 DPI, right? Now if I change this to, you can clearly see it says width as 59.5 inches and height as 80 inches. Now if I change it to 300, you'll see the width is reduces to 14 inches and height as 19 inches. So this DPI is meaningless. It is the value we provided to the printer when we print our art. For the image, only pixels are the data that it has and it has no data. Now, everybody tells you, tutorials, courses, YouTubers, they tell you your artwork should be 300 DPI to print it large. So 300 DPI, where did this number 300 come from? So 300 isn't a magic number. It has a history behind it. Before digital print or digital imaging came into picture, books, magazines, or anything were printed using offset presses. So on offset presses, the images were laid out flat as fine grids of dots, and it were measured in lines per inch. Quality magazines and newspaper, they ran around 150 lines, and it became a rule that if you're printing at 150 lines, your image DPI should be double of that. So 150 multiplied by 2, that is 300 DPI, and those print came out beautifully well. Now it became a standard that if you want high quality print, your DPI should be 300. But those 300 DPI were meant for offset presses that were printing books, magazines, and newspaper. All these three articles are handheld and read. So if you look, the distance between your eyes and the book, it is around 15 inches, right? So at this distance, a human eye can perceive 300 dpi of details, and actually there's a formula behind this. So how much details your eye can perceive depends on the viewing distance. So the formula is the minimum resolution or the minimum dots per inch our eyes can read or kind of see is minimum PPI is equal to 3438 divided by viewing distance. So this viewing distance is a variable that nobody talks about. So 300 dpi is good if you want to print something that is to be hold on your hand, maybe t-shirt, you want 300 dpi. But for a wall art, nobody is going to pick up their nose and stare at an artwork this close, right? When I am planning to print an artwork that is 8 feet long, 5 feet tall, somebody who watches that wall art will be standing 5 feet, 6 feet behind that. So the viewing distance is around 60 inches. And you know, the formula that I gave you, here's the table. So if your printed article is in your hand, the PPI you need is around 240 to 300 DPI. For small wall print, you'll be viewing it at 1.5 into 2 feet. PPI you need is 150 to 200. Minimum wall print, 150 to 150. Statement pieces, 40 into 60 feet. We'll be watching that behind 6 feet. The PPI you need is 50 or 100. So if we print our art on 72 dpi, it prints 8 feet long, 5 feet broad, and it's good. If someone who works in a billboard industry, ask them what is the maximum pixels that a PPI they use. As far as you go from the image, the PPI required for eye to perceive the quality, it decreases drastically. Now, busting this myth, let us see how do we resize our art. Okay, let us jump back to Photoshop, and this is again image size. So I wanted to print it into 72 dpi. You'll see 59 inches into 80 inches, which is very big for my case. But if your art is smaller than this and you want to, kind of enlarge it, how do you do that? So on Photoshop, there's this thing called Resample. So this particular image, it has pixels, and those pixels are fixed. When we click on Resample and we are trying to make it big, so if I take it to 300 dpi and we select Preserve Details, so what it does, it tries to add more pixels into the image. So how it does, it uses compute and it tries to add more pixels. There are different formulas for that. The Preserve Details enlargement, Preserve Details 2.0 bicubic smoother enlargement. So there's a whole lot of caveat that you can go and read what this formula means. But when you resample, the images are not what you click. There will be new pixels that will be added, and it can skew your image or the artwork. Also, you can use upscalers. There are many AI upscalers in Photoshop. We already have few. Let me show you. If I go to image, we have Generative Upscale, and this Firefly upscaler, and the best one is Topaz Gigapixel. I haven't used it before, but yeah, you can go ahead and kind of make it bigger, 4x, 2x, and kind of it adds more pixels, and there are different formulas to add those pixels. So just try multiplying it 2, and then again you can use the same formula. You want to print it into 300 dpi or 72 dpi, it depends on you. Okay, so that is how you resize. Now when you send your files to printer, that is where you provide your PPI value. So maybe 8 feet and 5 feet will be too long. Let me just go ahead and go to image size. I'll go to inches, and maybe I'll make it to 150 ppi. It gives me around 28 inches. I'll click on Preserve Details, and maybe I'll try 30 inches and 40 inches. So when we click on Resample, it kinds of added some details or adds new pixels. I hit on OK. Now this image is resized. I can go ahead and click on File. I can save a copy. So either I can save it as a JPG file, or a PDF or a TIFF file, whatever your printer accepts. So save it as a JPG file, hit on save, and that's it. That's how you resize your art for large prints. Now, if you're selling artworks on Etsy or Shopify, you might need to resize your artworks into multiple aspect ratio for all print frames. So I have a video that talks about how to automate this process. Go check that out.